Okay. Is any sound now? Testing. Testing sound. Okay. Hey, I think this is working. I think it's working. Is there sound? Can you guys hear me if there's sound? If you could, I would love it if you would post that you can hear. Just because I went through like 20 minutes of no sound and I was talking the whole time. I went through like 20 minutes. Okay, perfect. Okay, there is sound. Okay, all right. Okay, hey everybody. Um, all right, let's start this over. So, hey, I was just doing like 20 minutes of no sound, talking on video, and talking about what's going on with self storage investing during recession. So, are you wondering what's going on with the economy right now and real estate investing? I mean, what are you doing nowadays to either prepare for a recession, or if we are in a recession, what are you doing right now? Right? If you're not sure, well, let's have a discussion. Okay. So what's up, everybody? I am Powell. I am the managing partner, or a managing partner of Radiant Storage. We are the premier self-storage investing team for those of you who want to gain real-world experience and also learn more about self-storage investing. Okay, so before we get started and take a closer look, if you'd be, I don't know, generous enough to like and subscribe, that way you can stay up to date with all of our material as well. All right. Now, let's get ready to answer your burning questions. All right, about self-storage. Now, every week I get a ton of questions about self-storage in the current economy, right? We're in the current economy that things are changing, right? So questions like, how does self-storage do in a recession? Or how did self-storage do in the last couple of recessions, right? What are the interest rates right now, and how are they affecting self-storage investing? That's the question I get a lot. And what changes are happening in self-storage? Well, today we're going to tackle all those topics as well as more, and let's get into it. All right. So I guess the big question right now is, are we in a recession? And the short answer that I'm going to give you is, I don't know. I'm not an economist. I don't study the economy. I just can tell you what I see currently. All right. And so what do I see currently? I see, just like everybody else does, interest rates going up. Interest rates going up. We've had interest rate hikes this whole entire year. We've had, I think, 2 in July. We've had another one in September. Everybody's anticipating another one to happen in January. So interest rates have gone up significantly. And how does that affect self-storage investing, right? Now, what I've seen is that as the interest rates have gone up, the inventory and the amount of self-storage facilities that you could potentially buy out there are also going up, that they're not trading as fast and as for as much value as they were. So values are going down, interest rates going up, values are going down. So they're not the prices on them are going down. There's also less buyers, I would say, looking right now, less serious buyers, because you have to be able to close these deals in a tougher environment. And so I don't know. No, I wouldn't necessarily say a tougher environment, but I would say a sort of a changing environment. So that would be something that not everybody is used to at this particular point. And so not everybody's prepared to be a closer. So there's less buyers out there, less serious buyers. I'm sure there's a lot of people looking. There's more brokers doing outreach, meaning that in the past couple years, brokers haven't really had to do a lot of outreach. They can just put out their pro forma, they can put it out to the market, and then just say, okay, if you're interested, come to me. Well, nowadays it's not as easy. There's not as many buyers and not as many serious buyers and not as many buyers that can close the deal. So brokers are actually having to go out there and say, hey, what did you take a look at this property? Did you take a look at that property? What about this? What do you guys think? Take a look at ours and rerun your numbers and let me know. Let's have a conversation. So there's much more of brokers doing outreach. Okay. And I'll tell you what, a couple other things that I see. I see longer contract lengths. So in the past, contract lengths have, maybe been 30 days of due diligence and 30 days to close the deal. So a total of 60 days, something like that. That's pretty standard. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes a little longer. But I will tell you right now that I would see the contract lengths are lengthening out. They're both sellers and buyers. Buyers are requiring a longer term length because they don't know if they're going to be able to close that deal in 30 days. But also sellers are understanding that, hey, with the changing environment going on right now, it's probably going to have to be something like you may not be able to squeeze it in 30 days and 30 days of due diligence as well as 30 days to close the deal. So contract lengths are increasing. There's also things that you'll see like a financing contingency. So you probably haven't seen a financing contingency, or maybe you haven't written one in your LOIs in a long time. But I will tell you that probably every LOI going out of our camp is going to have a financing contingency in it, because there is the financing is a big concern right now. I'll tell you what else I see. Which I I don't know how, it was kind of a shock to me to see, is that the lenders are starting to pull back. All right. So with the interest rates going up, it's making the lenders a little more jittery and not so sure about if they want to lend in this environment, lend at a certain rate. Are they promising a certain rate and then the rates go up and then they feel like they're not able to meet their margins? So there's been a lot of lender pulling back at this point. Either pulling back can mean a couple different things, and we can get into this in a little bit. It can mean just a straight pullback, as in they're not going to lend on your deal, and they're going to just say no. It could be also that they give you terms that are not so good, or terms that are much harder to meet those requirements. So they'll either give you less loan, like less of a loan size, or they'll increase their interest rate. So they're going to increase their interest rate to a certain rate. They're going to require a debt service coverage ratio that that is a lot higher than what they previously had promised, or what you would thought that they would be requiring. So all of those things are meaning lenders are pulling back, and I mean all different types of lenders: bridge loans, credit unions, banks, preferred equity groups. A lot of lender pullback, debt funds, all those things, just pulling back in general, just a little jittery right now. So, does that mean we're in a down cycle? I don't know. Again, I'm not an economist, and I'm not going to tell you that we're in a down cycle, but I will just tell you that strategies need to be a little flexible at this point, right? And strategies need to change. And if we are in a down cycle, and things may be in a down cycle for a year, 2 years, or 3 years, I don't know how long, then whatever strategy you're employing needs to be able to take into account for those extended period of things going down, right? Because I would say we're definitely in a changing environment. All right. And with that changing environment, I get those questions, right? How does self-storage do in a recession? Because people want to, a lot of people want to compare it to multifamily. How did it compare to multifamily in a recession, right? And so when you're talking about a recession and self-storage, self-storage was really a very resilient asset class during the last two recessions. And we'd like to say it's recession resistant. A lot of people, I would say it's recession proof, but that's one of those things that you probably don't want to get caught in your words of saying something is recession proof, like it can't be affected by the recession. Well, that's pretty much untrue. I mean, anything can, nobody knows what kind of recession we would have. Nobody knows how it would affect necessarily self-storage or any asset class. You can only kind of say, how has it performed in the past? Now, in the past and how self-storage works, I will tell you that there are some main drivers when it comes to use of self-storage. And these main drivers, a lot of people call them like the 4Ds, the 5Ds, or whatever. They are displacement. Okay. Displacement meaning moving. When people move, there is a need for self-storage. Right? Another one of them is death. When people die, there's a need for moving that stuff into self-storage. You all of a sudden have a lot more stuff, and you got to put it somewhere. Right? Disaster. When a disaster strikes, a hurricane, a tornado, flood, whatever it is, there is a need for self-storage. Certainly temporarily, that need, it basically explodes right away, is that people need to put their stuff somewhere, right? And they oftentimes their house is not the place that they can put it in anymore. Divorce. Okay, when families divorce, there is a need for self-storage. There's a need for putting stuff, separating stuff, and putting that stuff. It can no longer go in the house, so it has to go somewhere else. And where is it going to go? It can't. An easy place to put it right away is in self-storage. Downsizing. Downsizing is, in recessions time where people are downsizing and going from a 4-bedroom house to a 3-bedroom house, or a house to an apartment, or a apartment to a smaller apartment, things like that, force people to use self-storage because, well, I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to get rid of your stuff, or you could just get rid of your stuff, right? But people in general, Americans in general, don't like to just get rid of their stuff. They like to collect stuff and have stuff, and would rather put it in storage for a later use versus get rid of it and then buy it new a couple years later. Okay, so those are some of the main drivers. Again, these main drivers for self-storage, use of self-storage: displacement or moving, death, disaster, divorce, downsizing. Okay, those are all main drivers for self-storage. Now, the thing is that all these things happen in a recessionary environment, as well as an environment where things are going up. So it's not. That's why it's not necessarily based on the economy whether or not self-storage is going to go up or down, right? So that's part of why it's been a resilient asset class during these times. Now, let's talk about what happened during the Great Recession. During the Great Recession, self-storage, almost every asset class was losing value. And when you look at the big REITs, so we're talking about Public Storage, Extra Space, CubeSmart, Life Storage. When you look at those companies, these big REITs, how did they perform during the 2008-2009 period? Well, they lost value in terms of, they're basically, their stock prices went down. And they went down about 3% during this time. When you compare that to multifamily, the multifamily big REITs, they went down about 7%. So they took a bigger dip. And when you compare that to the S&P 500, which went down like 13%, you can see that self-storage itself was still a pretty resilient asset class, more resilient than stocks and even multifamily during that time. And as things improved during the economy and the economy was improving, self-storage still did very, very well, right? So it did very well during the times of where the market was starting to increase and boom. Self-storage did extremely well, and which is why you saw a lot more building of self-storage, brand new self-storage coming online, and becoming more climate controlled and bigger and Class A and newer and more technology involved. So there was certainly an increase in the amount of self-storage as people were buying more stuff and feeling good about where they're at. They needed to put other stuff in places like self-storage. Okay, and fast forward to 2020. What happened in 2020? We had COVID. We had basically a worldwide shutdown. Well, self-storage was classified as a essential business, and as an essential business, it stayed open during the entire time. And it had a shift of where people no longer wanted to interact with as many people. So a lot of self-storage, a shift happened during that time, or I would say it was happening already, but sort of increased during that time of contactless type of interaction during self-storage. So people could rent self-storage on their phone, on their computer, call centers, kiosks, anything that maybe just didn't have the human interaction, and self-storage was able to flourish during this time. Actually, in terms of asset classes and real estate asset classes, it performed extremely well during this time, and probably better than most asset classes. I don't have the graphs in front of me, but I could probably pull those up later. But it did extremely well, probably one of the best, when it came to during COVID. So self-storage, that's how it's performed in the past 2 recessions. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily it's going to do the exact same thing in the next recession, whenever that happens, if that's right now or if that's in a couple of years. But it has been very resilient in the past. And so that's what a lot of people are looking at as far as how does it perform compared to multifamily. It outperformed multifamily in both recessions, and even outperformed multifamily in a lot of the booming times as well. So that all said, I always get questions about interest rates. Okay, interest rates, and how do these interest rates affect self-storage, right? Now, the increase in interest rates, obviously, I mentioned it a little bit before, is that as the interest rates have gone up, purchase prices have come down, valuations have come down. All right, and so that's also made that there's more inventory. There's more inventory out there. There's less buyers, but the difference is there's less capital out there. Okay, so if you look at the past 5 years or anything, when self-storage and the economy was kind of booming, there was no inventory because everybody was buying stuff, right? There was a lot of buyers. The valuations were very high, and they're continuing to go up all the time. And there was a lot of capital, meaning a lot of people wanted to lend. There was a lot of lenders out there. There was also a lot of people that wanted to invest with you. Okay, so valuations high, inventory very low, interest rates very low, amount of buyers very high, amount of capital very low. Very high. Now, as we're getting into this changing environment, things are starting to flip in that way. And so that's what I see as this changing environment, is this flip. Interest rates going up, inventory going up as well, right? Amount of buyers going down, right? Valuations on the properties going down, okay? But capital going down as well, right? Less lenders out there, less equity that people are investing into these deals. All right. So those are some of the changes that I see. I'll talk about interest rates, but some of the other changes that I'm seeing. I mentioned really quickly that lenders are very jittery right now. It is much more difficult to get a deal done. Whereas previously, the senior lender, they were going to give you the terms and they were probably going to honor it for, a year ago, they would have honored them for 75 days. So they'll say, oh, we'll give you this rate right now, and we'll honor this rate for 75 days. As long as you close within 75 days, this is the rate that you're going to get. Nowadays, they pretty much will not do that. Depends on what type of lender, right? But most of the lenders, they're going to tell you, hey, this is the rate if you close today. But if you're talking 75 days from now, I don't know what the rate's going to be. I can only just project, what it will be, but I can't give you for certain what it'll be. That's forcing people to, a lot of times if you've got a bridge loan or you've got a floating rate, they're going to require you to buy a rate cap. Rate caps can be, quite expensive depending on how big your loan is. But for those people that are in a bridge loan and they didn't buy a rate cap and these rates went way up, they went in, the rates were maybe like 3 or 4%. And then now they didn't buy a rate cap. And now the rates, they might be at 7, 8, 9, even higher, 10%. It could be, they're having to pay those rates, and they may not have buffered that into their pro forma. Okay. So again, we talked about longer contracts. So those are other changes that I'm seeing, as longer contract terms. And financing contingencies, like putting in a financing contingency, that was something that was probably hasn't been done, I don't know, for 5 years, I would say, and consistently that people are putting in financing contingencies. It's supposed to, but basically, like, sellers are like, if you can't get it financed in this environment, you're not the right buyer. But nowadays, I would say with every LOI that we're going to put out, every LOI is going to have a financing contingency in there. Okay. Now, the other thing about the changes is that you have to be able to acquire properties that will work in this down cycle. Like in a down cycle, that is maybe going to continue for a couple of years, you need to be able to acquire properties that will work and that will pencil out during those times. Okay. So other changes that I've seen is that, people are starting to think about development as well. Like I've seen a lot of people that are pushing more towards development. And now, how does development work in a sort of down cycle? I'm not exactly sure. So that's something that is a question. But I know that when lenders and a lot of people need more yield, there's more yield available in development. Okay. So getting to the last portion of our call today, which is our Q&A. I always like to have a little Q&A where we talk about any topics that you have. So if you do have a question, I'd love for you to post your question. Feel free to post your question inside the chat, whichever one that you're watching, or in the comments. I should be able to see them. And we'll talk about lending. We'll talk about finding deals, partnering, whatever questions you have. But there's a few questions that have been brought up previously, and so I'll go ahead and go over them. So one of them is depreciation. Right, I get this question a decent amount, especially right now. Right now, we're talking end of 2022. We've had this 5 years of bonus depreciation, 100% bonus depreciation in year one. Well, that is ending in 2022. It's the last year. Next year, 2023, that bonus depreciation tapers down to 80%, no longer a 100%. Okay, so that's a difference. So people ask, well, how does depreciation work in self-storage? All right, so this could probably be a very, very long topic. I'll just give it to you pretty quickly here. That depreciation is very similar to multifamily, that you can take it and you can do a cost segregation study in self-storage, just like you can in multifamily. In general, this is a commercial property. Self-storage is considered commercial, so you are a 39-year schedule versus a 27.5-year schedule on residential. But I think the most important thing here to look at is I've seen some numbers put out from cost segregation teams, and they put out these numbers that say that talk about reclassification. And reclassification means how much of your storage or multifamily or commercial property can be put into 5, 7, and 15-year life cycles. The more that you can reclassify, the better write-off that you would see, as the more depreciation you'd be able to get in, say, earlier time. Like right now, it'd be year one. So the higher reclassification, the better. And general multifamily is the numbers that I've seen posted are anywhere from 15 to 40%. 15 to 40% of the say the purchase price would be able to be reclassified in multifamily. Now, in self-storage, that number that I've seen is 30 to 70%. So multifamily, 15 to 40%. Self-storage, 30 to 70% can be reclassified. Now, that was very surprising to me. I saw that. I was like, what? I was like, in multifamily, you have carpet, or you have hardwood floors, you have windows, you have, tubs, cabinetry, lighting, all kinds of, plumbing, all kinds of different things that you would think that, okay, this stuff could be reclassified, right? It's reclassified. Whereas storage, you have, a door, a metal door, and then you have the surroundings, right? The roof and the walls. So what can be reclassified? You don't have all those systems and all those things that multifamily does. So initially, I thought this was weird for me to hear. But as I talk to more people about it, depending on the type of self-storage you have, it could easily be in that 30 to 70% reclassification range. So there is more depreciation that can be had in a self-storage facility than on average a multifamily property. Okay, hopefully that answers a question about depreciation and self-storage and depreciation. Question I got also is lenders. Like what type of lenders are out there for self-storage? I think this is a great question. And this is probably something that when I was first getting into self-storage was very I don't know, I was maybe overconfident and feeling like, oh, this is the easy part. This is like easy part. I already know lending from a multifamily point of view, and I also have I have a number of different lending contacts, and I've got a lot of experience in lending side of multifamily, so this part will be easy in self-storage. Well, turns out that it was actually the hardest part in self-storage. It was the lending side. But I'll just name a couple different lenders, because that was the questions, like what types of lending are available. So I'll tell you one of the best ways, and something that people don't think about oftentimes, is private lenders. Okay, there's a lot of storage that you can buy that somebody, whether that's one person or an entity, will be a private lender for you. So you don't have to go through a institution. You just go to a private lender. And because a lot of these properties are, it's like the properties are $1 million. It's $1 million is the purchase price. So the amount that you would need as a lender is not as high, as like a $30 million multifamily property, right? So, so you can find private lenders out there. I've used private lenders on a couple of my properties. They've been fantastic, and that's worked out great. Other opportunities for lenders, banks. So banks will lend on self-storage. Not every bank. Banks that like self-storage will. So not every bank will do it. That is just something to, just to know offhand, right? The ones that have experience with it generally like it, but other ones do not. Credit unions are kind of the same way. They may be a little bit more community-based. So will they lend to you? If you're in that community, yeah, you have a better chance. You don't always have to be. We have a credit union that lends to us, and we're nowhere near that property. That property is in Alabama, and so, but they'll lend to us, and I don't have anybody that lives in Alabama, so it's possible. How about the SBA, Small Business Administration? This is one of the things that's very different than multifamily, is that you can get small business administration. So the government will lend to you as well, and they can lend to you at a pretty high leverage. They'll go up to 90% leverage, right? So they'll work with a bank or an institution to get you 90% leverage on an SBA loan. Now, more difficult to get. There are probably timing wise, it'll take a little bit more time to get an SBA loan done, but it is very possible to get an SBA loan on a self-storage facility, right? There's other things that multifamily has, bridge loans, right? There is CMBS, commercial mortgage-backed securities. So that's generally what you're talking about, is like the bigger banks, right? So Wall Street banks, and we're talking about JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, or Barclays, things like that. Those are Wall Street banks that will lend. Life insurance companies. So there is life insurance companies that will lend to you. So like we're talking, some kind of unusual circumstances when you come to multifamily, but life insurance companies will lend on self-storage. And debt funds. So there's also debt funds that will lend to you on self-storage. So there's funds that are created that just do debt, and they'll do self-storage as well. What you don't see in self-storage versus multifamily is you don't see Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Okay, so there is no Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac lending for self-storage, and that's could be a difference in multifamily. Multifamily does have that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac component to it, whereas self-storage does not. Okay. Well, hey, everybody. I think that's probably it for today. Especially that this was round 2 for those of you who joined earlier and there was no sound. Apologize for that, but hopefully everything worked out here on round 2. But for those of you who are interested in partnering with me and investing with me on our times, if you're an accredited investor, we do have a 506c fund for you that you can invest with us. We do have a couple deals that are available right now, so feel free to reach out to me directly if you are interested in any of those. If you're not an accredited investor, it's something that we would have to talk about, and it's best to just reach out to me directly, and let's talk about how to get involved in probably future deals. But the best thing would be to reach out to me directly, and we can talk about opportunities for future deals as well. Also, just to announce, I do have if you're interested in joining my team as like a JV partner, there's a couple different ways that we can do that. So I have a number of different people that reach out to me and want to be a partner and want to see, want to learn more, want to be involved in the due diligence, want to be involved in the decision making, what's going on, want to be involved and learn how to operate a self-storage facility. Well, there's a couple different ways that you can do that, but the best way to do that is, to start that process is to reach out to me directly, because I only take on a very few amount of people into this program, and I only do it when I actually have a deal. So come and join me. Happy to talk to you about that. So in closing, that's it for tonight. Thank you. I would appreciate if you guys would give me a thumbs up or a like. Plan to do this again, hopefully next Wednesday. But if you do have any questions, I would love for you to reach out to me. Post your questions in social media or reach out to me directly, and hopefully I'll get a chance to answer those questions. And go ahead and if you're interested in partnering with me, fill out the form, the partnership form, and we'll go from there. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.